the Hollywood Unapologetic Podcast with Orlando Delbert, Filmmaking Essentials.
Let's jump into something today that feels really fundamental. It gets misunderstood so often.
What's that?
This idea about creativity. We're pushing back against that old romanticized notion, frankly, a pretty harmful one, that creativity is tied up with madness or mental illness.
Ah, yes. That trope.
Exactly. Our sources actually tell a very different story. They suggest creativity isn't the cause of distress. It can be a powerful source of mental health. Well-being, even.
It's a crucial reframing, absolutely.
Yeah.
Today we are doing into source material focused on what we're calling the creative self.
And these sources, they paint a really rich picture, don't they?
They do. We've got deeply personal reflections on the artistic journey, psychological studies looking at performance and well-being.
And even research exploring the real demands, the unique challenges within professional creative industries. It's quite a range.
So our mission is pretty clear. We want to unpack all of this.
We'll pull out the core concepts of this creative self, explore the key themes, the connections that emerge across these different views.
And most importantly, discuss what this means for you, the creative individual, in really practical terms.
Right. Because whether you're making art for a living, or maybe pouring passion into a hobby, or you just value creative expression in your life.
Understanding this link between creativity and self, it's incredibly relevant.
So let's start there. Really dig into this idea that creativity is a significant source of mental health, directly challenging that old notion.
One of the sources offers such a powerful personal anecdote about this, almost foundational.
It's a really vivid story. It describes a moment. Paris, 1954. Seeing the Jerry Mulligan Quartet play live.
Wow.
The author was just 15. Already teaching themselves jazz, had picked up boogie woogie from a book after seeing an earlier concert.
So already engaged.
Deeply. But hearing Mulligan live, it was described as transformative. They remember the feeling of that experience more clearly than major personal events from the same time. Said it fundamentally shaped every single note they've played since.
What's so striking is how they describe the music opening, and I quote, "a part of myself that is usually buried and hidden."
That phrase really resonates.
It does. It wasn't just about intellect or skill. It was accessing a deeper, less visible part of their identity, maybe less controlled. This connection, engaging creatively and uncovering parts of the self, that's a core concept here.
And it's not just about uncovering, is it? The sources talk about how art lets you experience emotions, manage them even. Emotions that might feel hidden or, as T.S. Eliot put it, undisciplined.
Yes. There's apparently a distinct physical feeling when creating feels authentic, when it's not just going through the motions.
Like something is emerging from inside you, something that maybe doesn't have another way out, often wordless, buried because it lacks words.
Which leads to a key takeaway about the dual nature of artistic experience. It's not just expression, bringing out deep emotions.
Nor is it only articulation giving those feelings form and voice.
Exactly. The actual concrete, lived experience of making art is described as fundamentally both expression and articulation.
A dynamic process, self-discovery, self-revelation. It adds something lasting to your conscious self, how you feel you fit in the world.
And there's another powerful dimension too, art enabling transcendent experiences.
Right. One source mentions Jonathan Haidt's concept of divinity, but prefers the term transcendent experience, connecting to something larger than yourself. That's seen as a significant way art enriches life.
What's fascinating is how this connects to authenticity. It's not presented as some fixed state you achieve.
More like a journey.
Precisely. A journey of self-discovery. It requires challenging those limiting, internalized beliefs we all carry around.
Instead of asking, who am I to do this creative thing?
You reframe it. The question becomes, who am I? Truly, who do I believe myself to be? And if you genuinely believe that, then the real question is, who am I not to do this?
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
Incredibly potent. One source gives a really vivid example of this struggle. The story is Scooter Braun.
Oh, right. He talked about creating the public persona, Scooter, almost like a mask he thought he needed for success.
Believing his true self, Scott, wasn't capable. It took real hardship, intense therapy, he said, to reconnect with his authentic identity, to fall in love with his name again. His closest friends finally got to know the real Scott.
And underpinning all of this authenticity, self-discovery, there's a foundation.
Self-trust. The sources present trusting your own intuition, your judgment, your inner wisdom. It's a cornerstone. especially creatively.
And it's not just something you have or don't have.
No, it develops. From self-awareness, understanding your values, it lets you make decisions, move forward, without constantly needing that external pat on the back.
So we've explored these core ideas: the creative self, well-being, discovery, authenticity. Now let's shift gears. Look at the landscape this creative self has to navigate, because it's filled with challenges, paradoxes even.
Yes. One idea that really stands out is this tension between vulnerability and strength, particularly in performance fields like acting.
It's a central paradox, isn't it?
Absolutely. Creative work, acting, for example, demands immense vulnerability. You're putting your emotions, your interpretations, yourself out there.
And precisely because it demands that vulnerability.
It requires significant reserves of strength, psychological, emotional, sometimes physical strength. Actors constantly push past their everyday comfort zones.
And that willingness to be vulnerable is what lets audiences connect.
Deeply connect. The sources mention two linked vulnerabilities: the self opening up to the character, and then the character being revealed to the audience.
This creative practice also means navigating interwoven realities. Theater, for instance, described as a liminal space.
That in-between state, where the hypothetical world of the play meets the real world the actor inhabits. Actors live in that gap,
Making the characters' emotions feel real for themselves in the moment.
while, crucially, staying aware they are acting. They shift fluidly between talking about the work as real, as fictional, sometimes as both at once.
That sounds like a delicate balance, which must make trust among collaborators absolutely vital.
Essential, especially in intense creative work. The sources highlight how easily trust can break, particularly during scenes with high emotion or simulated violence.
If someone gets too absorbed, loses that awareness of safety, of boundaries,
It can deeply erode trust in the group, so maintaining control, even amidst vulnerability, is key for those relationships.
and these intense experiences, they often come with a cost. The sources use the term lingerings.
Yes, effects that actors experience, short-term or long-term. And they're not abstract. They manifest physically, tension, spasms maybe?
Emotionally, too, like feeling fear, dread, despair, or even difficulty accessing positive emotions after a heavy role.
Exactly. And mentally. Thoughts or feelings related to the character just hanging around, lingering long after the work is done.
What does that suggest?
The potential for blurring between character and self. The act of repeatedly generating intense emotions as a role requires might make those emotions more accessible in the actor's own life.
Blurring the lines between the character's experience and their own.
And the natural emotional crash after the adrenaline of performance can be much worse if the role involved sustained dark focus or negative emotional states.
These pressures aren't just for performers, though. The sources talk about mental health challenges across demanding creative industries, unscripted production, for instance.
Right, the strenuous pace, unpredictable hours, difficulty taking time off. Studies cited show high rates of stress, distress in those fields.
And alongside the logistics, there's the constant exposure to criticism, judgment.
Learning to distinguish constructive criticism, actionable feedback from destructive criticism, the kind that just undermines confidence, becomes vital.
You've got external judgment from critics, audiences, internal self-judgment.
And often a stigma within the industry about discussing the emotional costs, being seen as taking things too seriously.
Yet, despite all these challenges, the sources consistently highlight the rewards, the things that drive the creative self.
That deep sense of purpose, believing you can contribute something meaningful, help others, improve the world even through your work.
And the release, maybe euphoria, from fully engaging with intense emotions through art.
Cultivating joy, finding and nurturing those rewarding aspects. The sources say that's essential for sustaining the creative self over the long haul.
So we've looked at the creative self, the challenging landscape. The crucial question then is, how do we sustain it? What are the practical applications?
One key insight is about getting unstuck. It often has less to do with skill set and much more to do with mindset.
How so?
Your actions flow from your core beliefs about yourself. If you deeply believe you're capable, worthy, you act accordingly. That belief comes first.
That perspective frames self-care very differently, not as a luxury.
Not at all. One source calls it a street fight, a radical active choice. Saying yes to yourself, even if it means saying no to external pressures, production demands.
So prioritizing sleep, time with loved ones, therapy, avoiding toxic environments.
All of it. Deliberately. The sources acknowledge it's tough, especially for people pleasers. It might mean navigating others being, well, pissed off. But it's framed as non-negotiable for well-being.
Building a strong support network is another critical piece.
Absolutely. Having that squad, friends, colleagues, mentors, people who offer balanced views, help you decode feedback, give emotional support.
And foster that sense of community, knowing I'm not alone in this, finding community and sharing those unique pressures.
Incredibly valuable. And practically, that community support links to setting personal boundaries.
Like intentionally avoiding spaces that are just sources of negativity, non-constructive criticism, gossip blogs maybe.
Exactly. Protecting your sanity, your creative energy.
And connecting back to self-awareness. Knowing your values helps make practical work choices.
Especially in fields like unscripted content, where ethical questions can pop up, using your core values as a guide for which projects to take on. Asking about a project's intentions before committing. That protects your integrity.
And when it comes to support, seeking professional help is strongly recommended.
Yes, and before a crisis hits, the sources say clearly it's never too soon.
Yeah.
Actively therapist shopping to find the right fit.
Someone you connect with, establish rapport.
That's the critical factor. Finding someone who understands you. Even more important than specific industry knowledge, though that can be helpful too.
Mindfulness comes up as well, a concrete technique.
For managing things like performance anxiety, enhancing emotional balance, practices like body-centered or thought-focused meditation are mentioned.
Improving breath control, amplifying helpful body sensations, like feeling rounded, reducing mental rumination.
Yes, reducing that angst over perceived errors, concrete benefits.
Moving beyond individual strategies, though, the sources also call for bigger changes, structural changes within the creative ecosystem.
A clear call for better leadership support in organizations, funding models that promote long-term sustainability, collaboration, not just short-term projects.
And widening access to resources, support systems, especially since many arts organizations struggle financially.
Which raises the need for healthier workplace cultures overall. Supportive environments where creators feel they have agency, can discuss their needs without fear.
Where financial pressures are acknowledged, addressed. Where education is provided about potential costs, like those lingerings we talked about.
And where discussion groups can exist to process difficult experiences. It's a fundamental challenge to the often paternalistic structures in place.
Finally, the sources push us to reframe societal perspectives. Around creative work, the emotions involved.
They touch on pathologization, that tendency to label intense but maybe normal human experiences as illness, and the stigma attached.
Also questioning the problematic idea of ownership of pain like suffering gives creative legitimacy and just the broader societal avoidance of uncomfortable emotions.
Exactly. Framing discussions about artists' intense experiences like actors navigating tough roles, not just as personal struggles, but as insights. Insights into the costs and rewards of engaging deeply with difficult material.
That could foster greater societal understanding, resilience even.
And resilience, the sources clarify, isn't about avoiding pain. It's about developing the capacity, the coping mechanisms to move through it.
We've certainly covered a lot, from its core connection to well-being and identity.
Through the intense challenges, the profound rewards of creative work.
And finally, exploring the personal strategies and the vital structural supports needed to sustain it.
It's clear this is a complex journey, deeply personal for anyone engaging their creative side. It highlights that intricate link between authenticity, vulnerability, resilience, and the environments where creativity can either flourish or falter.
So, for you, the new Hollywood generation of creators out there, forging paths in this constantly evolving industry, how will you integrate these lessons, these ideas of vulnerability and resilience?
How will you prioritize that radical act of self-care we discussed?
And ultimately, how will you protect and nurture your authentic creative self while you push boundaries, while you build a more sustainable, more ethical future, both for yourselves and for the art you share with the world?
You can find more insights on navigating the entertainment industry and achieving success in Orlando Delbert's work, including his book, Pollyanna's Tear-Soaked Battlefields of Hollywood, a survival guide against the cynicism and the hypocritical, and of course, the Hollywood Unapologetic platform. And always remember, you are the key to your own success. You are the new Hollywood generation.
Be informed, be prepared, and most importantly, be great.
That's it. Be great. Good luck out there.
See you next time.